Let's go! Gator! Gator! It's gonna be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal.
And the Ohio State Buckeyes are the first national champions of the playoff era.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to football.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to another Football to Football. And yes, we are going to spend the first 5 minutes or so talking about that Pro Bowl that apparently nobody cares about. Except for, I'm sure, in the ratings it'll show that people do care about it. They just like to make fun of it on the online, I guess. I almost said computer, like that thing exists. But, yeah, so, yes, we did not have a show on Thursday. We just went ahead and just waited till today since there's no point in previewing the Pro Bowl. And we might as well have just waited to do our previews for the Super Bowl on today, which we're doing part 1 of our Super Bowl preview, which we're going to do the Carolina offense against the Denver defense. And then obviously on Thursday we'll do the Denver offense against the Carolina defense, and then kind of give, overall thoughts on the game and predictions and whatever. But we will discuss the big news of today with Calvin Johnson announcing he's retiring. The Detroit Lions have come out and said that they're going to do whatever they can to keep him from retiring. We'll see how that goes. Justin Tuck has also announced that he's retiring. He apparently has been battling with that since 2012. San Diego has decided the Chargers have decided to stay in San Diego for this year, but they have trademarks that say they want to be the LA Chargers. So we'll talk about that. Thursday Night Football's contract is finalized, and we have some quarterbacks that feel like they need to be paid. So, guys, it's been a little bit. How was everybody's weekend? Kerry?
It was good. Had a pretty, normal weekend. Didn't do a whole lot, to be honest with you. Enjoyed my days off. And I know it sounds really lazy, but, man, I didn't even have to leave the house but one time, and it felt great.
Randy?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that really did not watch the Pro Bowl. It was on in the background while we were doing our own version of the Pro Bowl in my bowling league, but I watched very little of it. And I'm glad to see that the ratings are, in fact, going down. Hopefully it will bring on a change. I'm glad. We're talking about football here, but I don't know if you guys saw it. It looked like the hockey changes that they made for their All-Star game really ramped things up and made it more enjoyable. So it'd be nice to see.
That don't watch hockey regularly, like me, what were the changes that they?
From what I was told, it was instead of just a full game, they did 3-on-3 matches between the divisions. Like every All-Star in each division faced off in a little 20-minute game or whatever. And so you had 2 of those games, or a couple of those games, and then the winners face at the end, or it was something around those things. I didn't get to watch it either. I just heard that it was very enjoyable, and the people that were into hockey ended up loving it. So it just kind of shows that you can take something like an All-Star game and completely twist around what the game is, because 3-on-3 hockey is not what real hockey is. But you can look at it with the Pro Bowl and go, okay, well, obviously nobody's tackling, nobody's blocking, so let's do NFL blitz style. Let's have 5-on-5 stuff. Let's do crazy stuff. Let's completely change the way the game works, since nobody's playing the actual game of football because they're just there to have fun.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and especially with the changes in the hockey in their All-Star game. I watched the Senior Bowl. I watched the Pro Bowl in full. Both those games were, interesting for what they are. You get to see the guys that you've seen all year. You get to enjoy, just one more time before they move on to do something else. Or, when it comes to the NFL, it's like, oh, this is great because you're getting to see the best of the best. But at some points, you're right. It's just them playing football, and at some points, you can kind of tell they really aren't all in it. They're not really competing as hard as they could or want to, and that makes the game a little bit lackluster. I think that when you talk about the Senior Bowl, you got to hear people love the practices that Jason Garrett put on for the north side of the Senior Bowl, because they did one-on-one drills, they did all these different competitions between the players. And, the Jaguars didn't do so much of that, but that's why they loved it. And I think if you took something like that and put it into place, kind of like what Randy's saying here with the hockey, make it smaller, do just like do the NFL Blitz. Anything you can do to make it more competition where they're not getting hurt. There's no big chances of them getting hurt, but they can still have fun. You get to see the skill set that these guys have. I think the ratings are up. People care. It's more exciting when it comes to these full games. Just nothing there to really get excited about. I mean, this really doesn't come down to who gets home field advantage, kind of like you see in baseball,
Yeah, well, Gary, I mean, you watched the game. You were the only one to watch it. I didn't watch any of it. I was producing one of the other podcasts that we do here. What did you see?
This game, between, Michael Irvin's team and, Jerry Rice's team was just a regular game. You've seen these before. The fun thing about it is, and I'm a little bit surprised maybe that the ratings weren't so great, because it was a real offensive game. For the first part of this game, it was pretty competitive. Michael Irvin's team kind of got more defensive and got more turnovers, and so that kind of led to maybe not so much on Jerry Rice's side, but these teams were going back and forth. Really, honestly, Russell Wilson looked great, 3 touchdowns, used as running backs. 2 of those were to running backs. Freeman being one of those running backs. You got a chance to see guys like Teddy Bridgewater look great, and I was really surprised about that, because not that I don't believe in Teddy Bridgewater, I just was surprised at how well he did in the environment that he was put in. And, compared to what he was in the regular season, at times I thought, man, this kid can't handle a lot of pressure. Even Jameis Winston looked great in this game. The one guy I was surprised that didn't look all that great here was Derek Carr. That was a guy that I was completely blown away. And this, I know it's just a fun game and all, but I consider this guy, just one of the top quarterbacks in this league, even though he's so young. Did not have a great game, still scored a big touchdown, threw an awesome touchdown pass to T.Y. Hilton. It was beautiful. So some of those things were, off the collar, just fun. And I really did enjoy that part. But once again, the game doesn't really mean anything. But, it was kind of a blowout for Michael Irvin's team. They kind of got ahead. Those turnovers really helped his team. Besides that, it was more about the stories on the field, and that's really what this game comes down to. It's about you getting to hear Charles Woodson talk about the end of his career. This is the last football action this guy saw for the rest of his life. So that was kind of cool to get a chance to hear. You got to hear Eli Manning, different guys kind of talk about their seasons, different things. So really, all in all, the Pro Bowl was a lot of fun. You got a chance to see these quarterbacks back in action. Some of these running backs do their thing. Latavius Murray looked good. Different guys like that. It was just a lot of fun just to get a chance to see these different players. But once again, it didn't mean a whole lot. Just fun.
Yeah, and that's what I want to see more of is the fun part, which is why I think they need to tweak the way the game works. Because the little bits and pieces that I did see were enjoyable just because of how much fun they were having. I mean, yes, it was pretty ugly to see Tyrod Taylor throw interception after interception and like not even good passes. They were passes that I could throw. They were just ugly. But like the stuff that I really liked, and it really seemed like it was mostly the Seattle Seahawks out there just going, listen, we've been at the Super Bowl the last 2 years, so none of us could go to this thing. So I mean, it sucks that we didn't make it to the Super Bowl 3 straight times, but you know what? We're going to go to Hawaii. We're going to have a vacation. We're going to have a ball. And I mean, some of the trick plays that they were doing with the Seahawks and having a good time. I love the play with Richard Sherman where they put him as a wide receiver and then did a reverse, and he runs to the left side of the field and sees 9 different guys. So he decides to turn around and go all the way back across the field again before, I think it was Bennett, his teammate, just drills him into the ground on the sideline, just roughs him up a little bit, and the camera was right there, and you could hear them just both gut rolling at each other, just having a good time, just playing a goofy game of football, really. I mean, not caring about who wins and loses and stuff, which is, again, why I just wish they would get rid of the game aspect and just let them go out, have their vacation in Hawaii, and just goof around for a couple hours and entertain themselves and the fans.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, you mentioned that play with Richard Sherman. It was Wagner, actually, but that was great. Yeah, but both, you just mentioned the Seattle Seahawks. I got to point that out. These guys really performed well in this game. It's almost like they had everything that Pete Carroll taught them put into this game. Those guys outperformed themselves. Sherman, Wagner, and even Bennett. Bennett was a force. I mean, you would have thought this was a playoff game with him. He was getting busy, and he made things happen. I mean, he, I think, was credited for a turnover, an interception. I know Sean Lee got the turnover that really kind of started this thing off for that defense, and those are the fun things. You get a chance to see, some of those things happen. And
I'm watching the play on Twitter. I know.
Yeah, it is. He lost 22 yards on that play. But, another thing I want to mention, and thank you for reminding me about this, Randy, but, the one thing you did see more of is that Michael Irvin's team was more defensive-minded. But I'll say this, Andy Reid's team, where Jerry Rice is the guy, they really love to take chances, and they did it several times, and they were successful. They had a punt that they converted. They threw a pass with the punter. The punter played in high school. Blanking on his name right now, and they also handed the ball off and got a first down. And so those are some trick plays that they put in place. This is the kind of game you can do it because, once again, it doesn't matter, but it was fun to see. You love to see those kind of trick plays. That's what makes it exciting.
All right, anything else on the Pro Bowl?
No, they were good.
All right, so now that we spent a lot more time on the Pro Bowl than I thought we were going to, let's move on to that NFL news here that's been going on. We should start off with the big news of the day, which is Calvin Johnson deciding to retire, something that apparently he had told the team much earlier in the year. He's apparently told it's not like a final decision. I think he has to still go through the whole rigmarole of actually fully doing it, but he's told Martha Ford and all the people involved in the front office, thank you for everything, and some of the coaches and some of his teammates. The Lions came out with a statement saying they're going to try to do what they can to keep him, thinking about a Larry Fitzgerald type deal where they give him all guaranteed money up front for less money on his salary. Randy, you were, I asked you the question, just kind of us talking about it. Do you think the Lions will be able to lure him back?
No, I honestly think his mind was made up before the year. He just wanted to give them the notice. He wanted to give them the respect of, listen, I know my contract's to this, but, after this year, I'm done. And, it's one of those weird things where you hear some people go, well, how can you do that? How can you walk away from the NFL and all this money and stuff? Listen, obviously, yes, football is probably a huge passion for Calvin Johnson. That's why he got into it. But he's been in the league, 9 seasons, which is plenty, especially when you're in Detroit and losing every year. I'm sure that's just not enjoyable. And he's looking at it going, his entire career has been just nagged with injury after injury after injury to the point where I'm sure his living condition is a little worse for wear. I'm sure he wakes up in the morning and 9 different body parts hurt. So he's looking at it going, listen, I played 9 wonderful seasons. I'm still most likely going to be a Hall of Famer. I don't know what else I can really do to this other than maybe breaking some all-time records. I would rather be able to get up when I'm 50 years old and not need support from somebody. So it's time to move on. And you're seeing a lot of players start to do this. More and more players under the age of 30 are retiring. A lot of it because of the concussion worry. Some of it just going, listen, NFL players are making so much more money these days that they can play 4 or 5 years and be set for their lives and their child's life. So I think that's almost what they're looking at now. It's like, listen, we're going to go in, we're going to have a decent career, hopefully win, get our money, get out, and go on to the next stage of our life.
I apologize for using this reference, Randy, but I've got to do it because you pointed out something there that I really agree with, and that's the money aspect. These kids are making millions of dollars as they walk in the front door of their NFL facility, wherever it may be. And these kids are getting a chance to play 2-3 years, and if they play that long, they get a chance to look at their bank account and say, man, I could build a life with this. I could start businesses. I could do all these different things. Why get tied down to the NFL? I mean, especially if I've been injured, I've got to start worrying about my knees. Maybe if I go ahead and stop now, I can do A, B, and C that I wanted to always accomplish in my life. Maybe I wanted to go out and sail around the world. These guys can do that now because of the money they're making. This isn't the 70s or the 80s where you're making chump change and you're having to find a part-time job just to stay alive during the off season. So I look at that and I bring in the reference of CM Punk. And in the world of wrestling, he quit the world of wrestling because he had the money to quit. He didn't need them. He didn't like what was going on, so he left and he joined a different profession that he's always wanted to do, and that's MMA. So I think that's totally correct. And when it comes to Calvin Johnson, yes, he's lost a lot of games. Yes, he wants to be on a team that's successful, and they were very close. And I think that probably hurts him a little bit, probably hurts the pride a little bit. They just never got to that point. Now, I think if the Ford family, if the Detroit Lions said, man, we're just going to offer you a chance to be traded somewhere, maybe the Patriots want you or maybe somebody else if you want to continue, but that won't come. They'll never do that. We've seen Barry Sanders have the same problem. Barry Sanders really did want to go to another team. He even approached the Lions for a trade saying, I love you guys, but I'm getting older. I need a chance. I want a chance to go somewhere where I'm going to be successful. They disallowed that, so he walked away with the game, and he's okay. So Calvin Johnson's going to be okay too. I mean, you just feel bad because, never having a ring on his finger is kind of a disappointment because that guy's a Hall of Fame kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about, I just mentioned Larry Fitzgerald, and he might be another one of those that doesn't get a ring, You have to wonder how many more years, Larry's going to play, even though he's had less, I think, stuff on his body than Calvin. He's still kind of playing at a, people were, I think Johnson also, he probably sees it as, well, I'm not at my peak. I feel like I'm kind of starting to go towards the downturn of my career. And do I want to be playing like that? Or I'm not the elite receiver. Why not retire now? Stop hurting my body like Randy said and being a number 2 guy or a number 3 guy. And who knows if... It looks like this is nothing like Barry Sanders where he even tried to go into Detroit and try to get them to move. This is a total just he wants to retire kind of thing, and you got to respect that. Unlike CM Punk, who will actively be having people be rooting against him, hoping that he fails at MMA so that maybe he'll return. Calvin Johnson, nobody's going to be... Hopefully, no Lions fans going to be going around whatever else he decides to do and bugging the crap out of him, making him feel bad because he retired. It's the guy's decision, and I think at the end of the day, the Lions, it was too much too late for me. Like, they didn't do enough. I mean, last year was their closest opportunity. Obviously, they came within one penalty mistake and whatever of, you play the Packers and then you never know because you play that team twice already. But that's it. Every other time they're losers or they get real close but not enough to make the playoffs. I mean, just it kind of sucks for him. And Gary, do you think that there's any possibility he does try to come back for another team, or if the Lions convince him to not retire?
I really don't think so. I think legitimately, really, the injuries have piled up, and I think that he's decided that he's just done. I think it comes to a point in a guy's career that he's thinking to himself, how much is it really worth it? Do I have an opportunity? And to me, it would be very, very risky for him to do so. If he was going to try, I really do believe it'd be a team that's already settled, a team that's already in the hunt, and they've been in the hunt. New England Patriots are a team I just mentioned. That would be a strong possibility for him to even consider it. I think anywhere else in this league, there's no guarantees, so I really don't see it happening. I just don't think the Lions are going to be able to talk him into it either. I don't think they can prove that their team is going to be a contender by the draft or anywhere else this offseason.
Yeah, I don't think Detroit really has a chance of really talking him out of it, like you said. I honestly think Detroit's going to be in rebuilding mode now. They gave it a couple shots, and now things are looking like they're going downhill a little bit. But honestly, I don't know Calvin Johnson, so this is all speculation. But from everything I've read and listened to, it just seems like he's fine with this decision. It doesn't seem like he's going to make this decision and then regret it in a few weeks. I don't think we're going to see him do a Brett Favre and retire 5 times and continue to come back. But you never know. It's one of those things. You never know how much you miss something until it's gone. So, who knows if he's sitting at home, that first week, and he's watching his buddies play, and he starts missing it, and maybe he then comes back. But I think he wants to step away and do the next things in his life. It looks like he has a very solid game plan as to what he wants to do. Plus, the man's made over $100 million. So, he's not hurting by any means. So, it's just going to be one of those things that, I like that he respectfully did it, where he quietly told everyone that needed to be told almost a year in advance, going, listen, this is how I feel right now, and I just want you to know. Please don't make it a big thing. Don't put it out to the media. But just so you know, this is what's going to go down. And now, as it's becoming clear that that's where it's going, it's leaked out now. But just a class act by Calvin Johnson, and I hope the next stage of his life is just as successful as his NFL career.
Yeah, and I was watching the Pro Bowl when we had Charles Woodson talk about his retirement and the reasons why he wanted to retire. And the biggest thing he said is, I'm tired. He says, I played in this league. I've accomplished almost everything I can really do in this league. And sure, Calvin Johnson didn't win a Super Bowl, but this guy accomplished a lot in this league. And who knows, maybe he is tired. Maybe he is ready to meet that next level. I don't know.
Yeah. Only he really knows that answer, and we may or may not get that answer from him. But, we'll have to see if the Lions are going to be able to convince him at all. Or I agree with you guys. I don't think he will be convinced. I think he's kind of set in that decision, and that's kind of how it goes. Speaking of another player, Justin Tuck retires at the age of 32. He says he's been trying to retire since 2012. He tore his pectoral muscle in the middle of the season this year and missed the last 5 games. Of course, he won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. He leaves the league with 66.5 sacks. All time for him. Obviously, people aren't going to see him as that elite caliber guy like Calvin, but he was obviously a ton of help for the Giants. And still relatively young, 32. The linemen are usually the ones that can kind of last a little bit longer. What do you think? Gary, we saw him plenty of years.
No, we did. Yeah, for sure. And this guy was an important puzzle piece to the New York Giants. He really was. When that guy wasn't playing for that, organization, with the injuries and things like that, it just was a complete mishap, and they just could not overcome that sometimes. And, it's a sad, thing. A guy, like you said, that young, deciding to go. I think mainly it is because of injuries, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, they're nagging. And we've seen this guy several times have to leave games and, of course, miss, a lot of time, let's be honest, during the season. So I think it's one of those situations where we're kind of looking at it as he's just thinking, it's time. It's just time for me to move on. He's got other things in works in the fire, so I think he's going to move on to other ventures.
Yeah, this is another one of those where the injuries kind of took over. He goes to Oakland and gets the chest injury and basically doesn't play the entire year for Oakland. So it's just one of those things. It's like, listen, my body is giving out, and now it's time to move on. Unlike Calvin Johnson, he does have the success in the NFL. He does have the 2 Super Bowl rings. And, so I think it's an even easier decision for him now. I mean, he gave it a couple extra shots. His body just didn't agree with him, so it's time to move on.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks for the Raiders. He could have been a key part to their defense that was, obviously getting better with Khalil Mack and other key pieces there. Obviously they were going to lose Charles Woodson, so who was still, I mean, that's the thing about Charles Woodson, he was still playing well. There was obviously times where he showed his age, but he was still playing pretty well for being, 39?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crazy to think at that age, at 39, and being a defender, a defensive back, he's still playing at that high level, so... normally we're talking about like offensive linemen and quarterbacks are like the only ones that go until like they're around 40. So, I mean, that's pretty insane. Moving on from retirements to people that feel like they need to be paid more money. Kirk Cousins obviously had a big year for the Washington Redskins. He wants a longer term, obviously bigger deal. Do you think he deserves it off this 1 year, or should the Redskins wait?
I think he just wants some of this extra money that they're going to get when they get RG3 off the books. I think obviously Kirk Cousins has won that battle and feels like, he should be compensated. Now, do I see Washington doing a long-term deal? Probably not. I don't think you're going to see them go way over the top with Kirk Cousins, but as far as a raise and a decent sized contract, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I agree. He deserves it. He really does. He came into this season. They weren't really sure what they were going to have happen with him, but it ended up being a lot more successful. So I think he does, deserve that raise. I just don't know how much it's going to be. I agree with Randy. It's got to be a short-term contract. That way that they can kind of evaluate, maybe give him a 2-year contract, extend it, with a few more bucks on his contract to make him happy, and then from there evaluate if he is your future.
Yeah, the Redskins have already come out and said they're not going to be big spenders in free agency, which is something that's different for them. Normally Dan Snyder's a guy that kind of goes after anybody that moves and has a name, but he's at least become a little bit smarter to understand that that's not how you can really build a team. So you would think that, like Randy said, when you get RG3 off your books, you have money there, you can give some of that to Kirk Cousins, but you also got to be mindful of other guys, that you obviously have to try to re-sign. You can't give it all to Kirk Cousins because he's not going to be all of your answers. If that defense is still giving up so many points a game, Kirk Cousins is not going to be able to win you games all the time by just outscoring everyone. And there's going to be games where that offense is just not playing right. So you have to have a balanced team, and hopefully Dan Snyder understands that, and Kirk Cousins himself needs to understand that as well. Now, speaking of RG3, RG3, there's been other people that have come out and said that RG3 would work. I hate to continue to bring this up because, it's not an excuse to have to talk about the Cowboys on the podcast. It's that it keeps happening. It keeps being mentioned, so we kind of have to talk about it. RG3 being mentioned as, somebody that would fit in Dallas because he doesn't have to play right away. He can build up his strength back in his knees and learn from being around Romo, a guy that, RG3 might have to play more like, where he can't just run around like Russell Wilson, but he can use some of his ability to move like Romo and get away from people. Do you think this would be beneficial for the Cowboys to kind of have him as like your backup and then you can still draft a quarterback to be the third guy to develop.
I'm as a guy that follows the Cowboys closely and watches what Jerry Jones does, this would not be a surprise if they got him. I've heard all the time about the Manziel and rumors and all that. There is always a possibility. Now, if me personally beneficial, it could work maybe. But I really think that if Dallas is going to go forward and they're going to look to see what they can do, they really believe that Romo can stay, as healthy as possible. They really believe that. I don't know, if that's going to be anything real. But I want to say this. I really feel like they want to go in the aspect of Aaron Rodgers, guys like that who've been on the bench and came in and played for the quarterback when he's not in. And I think that's where they're going to go. I think they're going to either draft somebody or maybe even free agency. But I just don't know if RG3 is going to fit that. I'm not sold. He's had coaching problems, and I'm not sure if Jason Garrett himself is willing to deal with a guy who tends to try to get his head coaches fired.
Yeah, it's tough to place RG3 in a Cowboys uniform. Not that he doesn't have the talent. It's just like Gary said, he just has so much drama built around him right now that going to Jerry World, I don't think would be the best place for him. But the way all the rumors are setting up, you guys are going to have Tony Romo as your quarterback with backups of Johnny Manziel and RG3. I mean, how much fun is that going to be for you?
The thing with RG3 to me is that this guy has to be humble at this point, and you're coming into a situation where you're not going to be the starter. And
But even if he is a starter, hopefully he is humble, and we see the RG3 of old, his rookie season, and we did. Obviously, Washington ran that kid into the ground with the way they ran that offense and let him get completely destroyed, so his knee completely gave out, and then he was just not the same quarterback. So hopefully this year off basically not only, helped his body mend, but helped, his psyche mend. And like you said, Sean, he's matured and will be coming in with a much better focus. Listen, we'll be talking about Cam Newton here in a little bit, but Cam Newton almost went through the same issues where, his cockiness was a little too much, where he focused more on having fun than focusing on what he needed to do off the field and the game planning and stuff. And this year was the first time you really saw Cam Newton, put the whole package together. Yes, he's still having fun. Yes, he's still flamboyant and cocky, but he is doing all of the work off the field where his physical abilities are used at the peak performance, and he is out there dominating the league. Can RG3 do the exact same thing? I think so, if he can get his head wrapped around the game.
Yeah, I agree. He's a guy that definitely would have a luxury in Dallas of having an offensive line that could protect him for the most part and give him some time. But, it's all going to depend on him and his attitude, and I can't really judge that. I don't know him personally. I just know what we've heard, what we've seen from him. Is that maturity, in play here? Is he really learned his lesson? I don't know. If he has, he could be definitely a big free agent player for any team in this league because the guy has talent. He's just got to get his head on right.
All right. Well, we move on to another quarterback similar to, RG3, Tyrod Taylor. Had this wonderful season with the Buffalo Bills. Rex Ryan always has been talking about Tyrod Taylor can be one of the stars of the league. Tyrod Taylor feels like he deserves money. Do you think he deserves money based off of this 1 year?
Calm down, Tyrod. All right, just calm down just a little bit. He had a decent season, but I really think a lot of that is because he had Sammy Watkins to throw to. You don't have
but hold on. Okay, we're giving Kirk Cousins the benefit of the doubt that he should get money based off of what he did.
But not too far. I think Kirk Cousins managed the team better than what Tyrod did. Now, Tyrod's a great talent, and the way he has kind of come out of the blind spot of Baltimore and has become a starring role, I get it. Just he made a connection with Sammy Watkins that worked extremely well, but that was it. There was nobody else on that team that he connected with very well as far as getting the ball to them.
Well, and let's not mince things here. Kirk Cousins had to do a lot by himself because he didn't have a run game for many of those games, whereas Tyrod Taylor had, himself. He had LaShawn McCoy, he had Carlos Williams, and even when those guys were down, he had other guys. What's his name? Leganey or something, whatever the third guy was. He came in and played well at times. So, he did have other. I mean, I think when you're looking at a receiver core, Sammy Watkins maybe counts for two people. But if you're looking, I think I'd rather have Pierre Garçon than like a Robert Woods or the other guys that are there. So maybe you're looking at it, you're saying, okay, well, overall, perhaps Kirk Cousins' receiver core a little bit better, but he had nowhere near the run game that Tyrod Taylor had, and of course Tyrod Taylor can do things with his legs. So taking that into effect, does that also affect how well the team did because he had other people to help him around him?
A little bit, and like I said, I can see it. I mean, if they go out and give him a contract, I'm not going to come on here and go, oh my God, it's terrible. I mean, unless they go like Jay Cutler contract or something stupid, because I can see it, and I understand why he wants the money. Again, it's like RG3, where RG3 goes out there and has a killer rookie season, and his knee falls apart. Tyrod Taylor, that could happen. I mean, he's a running quarterback. He had the second most rushing yards by a quarterback, only behind Cam Newton. You can see great things in there. I want to see him be able to see the field better. Especially watching him against the Jets, and trust me, he destroyed the Jets when they played him. It was just, he's still in that college phase of, my first target is this guy. If it's not there, I look to see if Sammy Watkins is not quadruple covered. If not, I'm running. I want to see him be able to kind of dissect the field a little bit better before he really gets that big pay raise that I really think Tyrod thinks he deserves right now.
The kid is a good athlete, and he's got some wits about him. I think, you're right there, Randy. I think he needs to get a little bit more football intelligent. I think that he has definitely some room to grow, and I think he's a great, kid when it comes to, just being elusive, using his athleticism to really help him get over. My thing is that's what worries me. The biggest part of this is that he uses his legs so much. He gets himself in some situations that definitely could keep him out from, 4 to 6 weeks if he gets hurt bad enough. And you can't have your quarterback put himself in positions like that. You cannot give a guy a huge contract and him put himself in danger. You've really got to figure out a way to keep him calm down, to get him to stay in the pocket, to do things that would be more beneficial to him and, of course, the team, and to give him a big contract like that. You can't pay this guy tons of money and then put him on IR for 6 to 8 weeks and then expect him to come back. That's just silly. I mean, you've got to make sure that he gets himself in a position to prove that he can protect himself and to make a big, splash in this league before you do pay him that much money. He does deserve a little bit of money, but not the money I think he wants.
So I just looked real quick, and Sean, I want to ask you what you think. Just because Tyrod Taylor gives me the Aaron Rodgers feel because, again, he was a backup for a while. And then, he finally gets that starting spot, and he does a pretty good job with it the first year. So I looked it up, and Aaron Rodgers, after his first year of starting, after sitting on the bench for 3 years, he got a 6-year, $65 million contract. So would, like, a 4-year, $45 million contract, do you think be suitable to what Tyrod's looking for? Or do you think it's too much, too little? What would you think?
I think that's fine. I mean, I don't know what he's looking for. He has not said exactly a price range, and he probably won't say that to the media because then that's going to be dissected constantly. That's probably something that he might be saying to his lawyer and to his agent and whoever else, I think 40, like maybe you pay him $10 million a year, 4 years, $40 million. I don't think that's too bad. Maybe you want to make it. Maybe if he agrees to 535, I don't know. I don't think you go more than 40.
And then, while just doing more research, I'm more now leaning towards the poor kid needs a raise. He's making less money a year than Ryan Mallett, Geno Smith. Scott Tolzien
I mean,
is
he
making
definitely
more
needs a
money than him.
raise. He definitely needs a raise. I mean, if you don't give him a raise, that's freaking BS. You know,
Exactly. When's his contract out? Do you know that? Does
see.
it tell you? Because that's what I'm interested in here. Because depending on when his contract is up.
2017.
Oh, either
Okay.
way, yeah. I mean,
Yeah. So I mean, I restructure his contract, give him a boost, give him the lower tier quarterback salary, which is obviously more than he's making right now. I mean, that's at least a raise. Maybe keep it to the same point. Maybe keep it 2 years, and with the restructured money. That way you can get an idea. You can't overpay this guy too fast. I'm telling you, I have fears. If you pay him a lot of money, you go 5 years, that could kill you, especially if this guy doesn't pan out.
I mean, you can do a 3-year and you give him a lot of guaranteed money up front so that it can outbalance the low payments that he's getting weekly now, until 2017, and then you do maybe to 2020, you do 3 years, and you see how that goes. That's just a thought, but
Yeah.
So moving on speaking of contracts, the NFL ratified the contract that we pretty much had already outlined here a couple of weeks ago, where they would have NBC and CBS have a split of 5 games each, and then the NFL Network would take the other, was it 6 games or 8? It'd be 6 or 7 games or whatever. Well, I think it's 8 because they do 2 Saturday games too. So, the channel thing doesn't bother me. Who cares if it's on 2 channels? It's channels that everybody has. They pay about $450 million for these for this deal, so NFL got them some money. This year Thursday Night Football was better than it has ever been since they instituted Thursday Night Football. Any thoughts on this at all?
Well, I think the competition level rised this year because it seemed like almost every Thursday night game was a divisional matchup. They wanted it to be the rivalry game type atmosphere to kind of hide the fact that the quality of the play for the entire game.
Well, and also it's less for you to
not
prepare
there.
because it's a common opponent.
Yeah, so I think that strategy works. I'm just not a big fan of the Thursday night games. None of the players like it. None of them enjoy it. If it was a way that they could work it around, give 2 teams or get every team 2 byes and, spread the season out a little bit so then you have your bye and then when you come off, you're playing the Thursday game and somehow make it work like that so you're getting the full week into that and then it kind of gives you extra time even after. I would be for it, but then that just becomes a scheduling nightmare. So I'm just not a fan of the Thursday games. Yes, they were better this year, but the quality is still much lower on Thursday than it is Sunday or Monday.
Yeah, I'm glad that they had some success, especially for the fact that they did change things around to get that success, and it's good. I really, think this is really geared just to get, as much football on your TV during the year, and it's got some success going. I think a lot of that, to be honest with you, has to do with, fantasy football. People going to bars on Thursday nights now to go watch games because these games matter, especially division games. I think that's a big part of this, and if they continue on that route, it's going to be okay. And I could see where the NFL wants to offer networks, hey, this is your opportunity, get into this thing, and I totally understand why they buy in. So I don't have a problem with this. I think it's fine. I'm sure the teams don't like it as much because it does affect their schedule during the year, but the way that they have things working out now, you got Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's all kind of out there.
Right, the Saturday games are more towards the end of the year when college football is kind of done by then, so it's not interfering with that. But speaking of a team in San Diego that have been rumored for a long time to be moving, the St. Louis Rams became once again the Los Angeles Rams for sure, and the NFL gave the opportunity for one of these teams to go ahead and, if they wanted to, make the move along with St. Louis to that new stadium. We had heard almost a month ago now, I think, about the trademarks that they had filed to be the Los Angeles Chargers and some other kind of Los Angeles trademark. And then there was talk about, there was people already writing reports. They were already out there, in fact, that they're moving to Los Angeles, the Chargers, and they will be the LA Chargers. And then all of a sudden, that same day, out comes the owner, Mr. Spanos, and he says, no, we're still considering it. Obviously, we have till 2017. They have to make the decision before the end of the season, actually, end of the NFL season next year, because it's January 1st, 2017, I think is the deadline. Or it might be after week 17, whatever it is. They have to make that decision. But for the 2016 season, they will still play in San Diego. Do you think that, considering all the stuff, because basically they're going to have a redo of last year, where the fan base will be wondering once again, are they going to be gone? Or, all this stuff. Do you think that this benefits the Chargers at all here? Sure, they went ahead and moved.
I think they wanted to, but the logistics with the Rams is still a little more complicated, and they didn't want to rush into a deal where they would feel like they would get screwed in the end. So, because it sounded like, from all reports, that they were close to an agreement with the Rams. Like, they were, in principle, they had the deal set, but they wanted to take their time and make sure all of the fine print is correct and everything is okay. So they decided, listen, we have this whole extra year, so let's use it, make sure everything is in a row, and we will stay in San Diego for this season, which we're allowed to do, and then we'll go to Los Angeles. And then, the reports came out that they were already trademarking the LA Chargers, and this, I think, was just a no, don't look over here to what we're doing. We still love you, San Diego. Please continue to support us and give us money next year and come watch football at our wonderful stadium because we love you. They don't. They're moving. It's going to happen next year. They're trying to cover up the backlash as much as possible and go, no, we haven't decided yet. Come show us how much we love you and build us a stadium and we'll stay, we promise.
You're coming up with, Randy, it's probably could be very much the truth. I think it's more true than some of the other thoughts I had on it. I also kind of figured in that San Diego may really be reconsidering their thought process on building a new stadium. Maybe they're willing to find more people to support this, team and find a way to build a stadium for them, find a way to fund the different aspects to get this team to stay in town, in San Diego. And those projects and all the things they have working behind the scenes have been in contact with the San Diego Chargers and basically making a lot of promises to them, saying, hey, if you guys stick around, maybe we can make a final deal. And if you got time on your deal, we got time on ours. We can work this out, and you guys could stay right here. That could be a possibility. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know anybody in San Diego when it comes to that stuff. But I just think that there's another side of the coin that could be going on, because in business, a lot of things can be under wraps for a long time, and all of a sudden one day you're like, wow, where did that come from? It could be either or, but I mean, I definitely understand where Randy's coming from here, because you want people to buy tickets. You want people to still care about this team. You don't want them to say, well, it's fooey with you guys. You guys are going anyway. Why should I even pay you a ticket?
I think Randy brings up a good point, because we have to remember that Stan Kroenke's original vision, he didn't want another team. He went with the whole, we'll deal with another team so that he could get the total okay from everybody, because I think that was the one thing that was going to be against him, was that San Diego and Oakland were kind of already okay to be with each other. They were okay to be buddies. Whereas Stan Kroenke really wanted the Rams to be, it's just the Rams. We're moving by ourselves and whatever. And obviously, again, this is the Rams stadium that the Chargers would be sharing. I don't know that it would be very much like the Jets and Giants, where that's pretty much a 50-50 deal or whatever. So it would sort of be like, okay, are we going to get equal treatment? Is this what is this going to be? All this kind of stuff, and so we still don't even know if there's going to be a realignment or anything now of the conferences or the divisions or anything, because now there's a logistical thing with St. Louis, or maybe they don't even bother with it because we do have teams that are kind of in the center of the state and they have to go across. But actually that division actually works out better now, I think, even.
Yeah.
Because
it gets them a lot closer.
They're all next to each other now. So never mind what I just said.
Sean, obviously I don't follow soccer much. Does San Diego have an MLS team or anything like that?
They have San Jose has an MLS team.
How close is that to San Diego?
Close enough.
Well, I was just thinking it would just be great of San Diego to go, we know you're leaving, but here, we're going to build this amazing stadium and bring in an MLS team, and look how amazing this is. Because I do see soccer kind of rising. I don't know how you've seen it.
They have a zillion. They have another LA team that's coming next year. They have Atlanta is getting their team next year too. So I honestly, I think if you are the city of San Diego, you are telling the Chargers, "Oh yeah, we're going to build a stadium. It's going to happen or whatever," and then just go, "Oh, but it's not for you. You go to LA. We don't care about you. We're bringing in soccer. Screw off." Yeah,
oh man.
And San Jose just got their stadium done last year, so and their thing is beautiful. They have like the biggest outdoor bar in the whole United States. So those things are getting kind of crazy, and Don Garber keeps talking about he wants to go over 24 to that the MLS could become as big as the NFL as far as teams before we know it, and it's gonna be nuts. But
wow. Well, one thing I wanted to bring up before we move on, and that is the fact that let's just say something happens, and maybe my theory comes to fruition, and San Diego finds a way to stay in San Diego. The Raiders would have an option to go to LA after that. And, there's been talks about that maybe being a possibility, but there's also been thought processes of Las Vegas being an option for the Raiders. And I always thought that.
And also an option of if the Chargers leave, that the Raiders could go to San Diego.
Mm-hmm. So, vice versa.
Oakland wants out of Oakland so bad. They'll take
Who
anything.
wants to play in that damn baseball stadium?
It could not be fun at all. I think Oakland would go play in Montana right now if they were given a good stadium.
That's the thing. The thing with Las Vegas. They're talking about having a hockey team over there. Do you really think NFL Las Vegas that works?
Sure. They're getting things figured out. I don't know about you guys though. Listen, there's going to be a professional team in Las Vegas. I'm going to guess within the next 10 years. But I don't know about you guys. I honestly think the first sport that's going to go there is the NBA. It just seems like Adam Silver and those guys over there are starting to understand sports betting and how much it benefits them. And I don't think they're afraid of Las Vegas.
Who are you taking over there? Because you have to add 2 more teams if they have to be even. So who are you removing to take over?
Don't remove. Bring in another Seattle team.
So you bring in Seattle and then a Las Vegas team.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
I like your thought process here, though, Rainey, because of this fact. I was just having this discussion with my wife today because she's from Las Vegas, and I was kind of saying, man, would it be kind of funny if the Raiders went to Las Vegas. And I said, how would the people out there react? She goes, it's so funny because she goes, it's not really a football city. They really don't talk about football all the time. Really, that's a basketball and baseball city. They're really geared towards those sports. Football's, okay, guys watch it, but really basketball and baseball are huge. So basketball is definitely a big deal there, and I think that it's an indoor sport. You don't have to worry about 110-degree weather, in September. I think it's perfect, and I think that would actually be a great option.
Yeah, bring in Las Vegas, bring in Seattle, and then as the commissioner say, Seattle's first expansion draft pick is Kevin Durant because that's where he was supposed to be playing anyways.
There you go.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be funny if like the NHL and the NBA kind of go together and they go, okay, we're gonna make a arena for an NBA and an NHL team, and
I think
bring
it'd be
them both.
brilliant. I think it'd be definitely brilliant on both of them because that seems to really work out when you get an NHL team and an NBA team that really work together. It just, I mean, you cut the costs out, and I mean, sure, you have the logistics of who's playing who when, but they have so many days off in between, and they're trying to spread those out even further now. That, I mean, it really works, and then all it is a moneymaker, especially in Vegas. I mean, because how many people go there to vacation, and now you go down to the vacation and go, oh, hey, do you want to go catch LeBron? LeBron's playing over here at this new stadium. Do you want to go check that out? Oh, yeah, sure. That thing would be sold out nonstop every single time.
Oh, definitely. And think of the celebrities that basically hang out there tons of times during the year. I mean, that they probably buy season tickets there. And, of course, all the other business people that, buy out all these different suites and different things for the casinos, they're going to definitely probably buy into that.
All right, so we talked about all this, and we do have to talk about something that's kind of sad because, you never want to hear about it. Obviously, maybe this means that it's working. This thing with, in wrestling, all we've been hearing about, Daniel Bryan this, concussion this, all that. Well, a report came out, I think a week or a week and a half ago, that more concussions were reported this year than in the last 4 years. Now, obviously, that's because pretty much every single concussion is reported, whereas before the previous year, that whole protocol wasn't really around. So do you think it has to do with that? Or do you think it has to do with there really were that many more concussions this year than...
Actually, that number kind of scares me because I'm with you, Sean, where I really think the reason why it's so high is because more concussions have to be reported. They're really keeping an eye on it. Yes, there were still a few times where you could definitely tell they missed one.
Case Keenum.
Yeah. But, they're far more aware of what concussions can do to your brain and how much it's going to affect you long term. So they're very much focused on it. And the reason why it scares me is if the number is this high right now, could you imagine how many it was in the 80s when helmets were so much worse and they didn't care and football players just went, how many fingers are you holding up? 33. Close enough. Go back out there and play. I mean, they just didn't understand it back then. So, I mean, if they understood it back in the 80s, I mean, I could see that number be tripled. And that's what's really scary. I mean, you see all these reports of what it's doing and to all of these athletes and stuff. It's a good thing that they are cracking down on it. It's just, it's still scary that even that they are cracking down on it, we're having such a high number.
I think I'm on the other side of the fence. I'm going to disagree it's going to get bigger. I think this is as big as it's probably going to stay around this because of this fact. They are paying a lot of really close attention. They really do want to make sure that they're not going to get in trouble about anything. The NFL is saying you guys have to do this. If you don't, we're going to do all sorts of terrible things. You're going to get fines. People are going to get fired, all of that. The doctors on the sideline, the trainers, everybody knows that we've got to get this right. I'll take it in a guy that I watched this year, Sean Lee. Sean Lee didn't even get hit in the head this year in one game, and he went to the sidelines, and then he wasn't feeling good, and they said, oh, you got a concussion. Didn't even look at it. In fact, they said he could have played the 2 games he missed, but they said, well, we can't afford to call it not a concussion, because if it is a concussion and he goes to the doctor and they say it's a concussion and we don't see it and they see it, then we're in trouble. So I think you've got a lot of concussions on that list that are slight concussions that are nothing that is major. In fact, if you look at the guys that actually really started this process, they say if you even see stars, it's concussion. You don't have to get sick. You don't have to feel any other consequences. If you just see stars, you got a concussion and you're put on that list. It's like saying you got a leg injury. Well, we're going to consider it broken because you sprained your leg. Now, it's still a leg injury, so that's why we're going to call it a broken leg.
The difference I would say is your brain is very delicate compared to your leg muscle. And if you're seeing stars, that's a big deal. Even though it's not like, oh my God, I just got thrashed and I can't even like think right now. They have to do it that way.
And Gary, you listen to the Fantasy Focus like I do, and Stefani Bell always says there's no such thing as a mild concussion. I mean, those things are always. I mean, a concussion's a concussion. Now, if you get knocked out, that's an added thing to it. Or, I mean, I'm sure there's things that would make it even more severe just because of other things that have happened. But you see stars, that's a concussion. You have rattled your brain, you bruised your brain, and that's what they're looking at. So yes, I mean, they're being extra careful about it, but I think it's a good thing.
Well, I think it's a good thing, but my point being is I don't have a lot of fear about it because I think guys are not getting in full concussions. I don't even think some of these guys are seeing stars. I think, really honestly, they are so careful now that they're pulling guys out of games because they feel like they have a concussion, and they're not willing to put the guy back in the game because of the consequences, because people are so sensitive to this. And it is a big deal.
But isn't it better for them, though, that in the long haul that you didn't? I mean...
Well, no, but think about this. I'll use my leg thing. Okay, what if a guy comes out and he has cramps, and they're like, well, you got cramps, but, we're going to say you got a sprain. I'm just saying there's some situations this year I really believe this list has gone really large because there have been times where guys haven't. Am I saying that's a whole 80%? No, I'm saying that the percentage I'm talking about is probably small. It's probably 15% of these guys on this list. I'm just making the point that it's going to be exploded because we're really with a fine comb looking for this to be the case. I've seen evidence that these NFL players that have definitely got dementia, that have had other health problems, get depression, kill themselves. It's a big deal. It should definitely be a big deal. My point being, though, is we're so sensitive to it that now we're adding to the list just to add to the list because we feel like we have to.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, and I know, Gary, you joked around about like the leg injuries and stuff. That does happen. Look at the Patriots. Tom Brady will get a rug burn on his knee, and he'll be on the injury report with a knee.
Well,
that already happened.
We already know how Bill Belichick, he does that to play mind games, but, it's just...
Yeah. And I don't want people to think I'm being insensitive because I really do believe the concussion thing is serious. Now, is it as serious as that movie? Maybe not. I don't know. My point, though, is I think we're over conservative about it, and I think that we need to watch it, understand what it really is there, and not blow it up just to blow it up.
I just think that when it comes to the brain, you can never be overly conservative, but that's just me.
No, I mean, but you're saying that's true. What you're saying is not false, but when you put in false pretenses with that's when I have a problem with
it. Fair enough. It is what it is. I mean, I think this is going to keep going up because it's just they're going to get more and more sensitive about it as the years go on. This is not going to be like security in the outside the stadium that they heighten it up when something crazy happens and then it's kind of like whatever the rest of the year. This is something that's going to be the same throughout the year, and we'll have to see how they are about it in entering into the 2016 season. But
I hope that J.J. Watt doesn't fart and then they call it a concussion. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I know. Whatever. We do have one more game we got to talk about in this 2015 season, and that, of course, is Super Bowl 50 happening in Santa Clara over there where the 49ers play. We're going to start off here with the Carolina offense, which has been tremendous the entire season, very run game oriented, but still has Cam Newton passing the ball, having his best touchdown ratio of his entire career and all that stuff. Let's look at it from Cam's perspective here, and going into what he's going to face, probably the best defense he's played all year. Now, let's be fair, he plays his own defense in practice, which is good, is great in its own right. But Denver's defense does things, obviously, that it makes you think differently. The way they do certain stunts and the way that they position the players, the versatility of some of their players. Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware there at the linebacker. I mean, So let's look at this from a Cam Newton going up against this defense. What are the positives? What are the negatives here?
Well, the positive for Cam Newton is his versatility and his ability to move around the pocket. We kind of talked about it last week with Tom Brady, where he completely gets destroyed on almost every play. But Sean, I think you were the one that really pointed out best that Cam Newton's going to be able to avoid some of that. He's going to be able to move around. He's going to be able to escape a lot better than most quarterbacks. The negative, though, is just how good Denver's defense is. I mean, if you look at their stats, they allowed less than 200 yards passing all season. I mean, the things that they do on defense and what Wade Phillips has been able to institute with all of the talent that they have is all the different schemes, all the different looks, where, sure, they can still only bring 4 people, but it's like they've completely confused the offensive line with what 4 people they're bringing and what angles and stuff, so then they can still drop back people and just cover everybody. The thing that Carolina has going for them, I think, is speed. I think they're a bit faster than what Denver is used to, so I think they can exploit that and the whole aspect of their running game. I mean, the whole goal, I think, if you're Carolina, which was what I thought was going to be the same with the Patriots, was play managed football, get yourself in 3rd and short, which is what New England did. They were un-New England-like and could not convert that 3rd down. I think Carolina will have a bit more success because you have running backs like Jonathan Stewart and Mike Tolbert who can get you that extra yard or 2 than most. They can push through more piles than most running backs can just because of their girth and their strength. And then you also have Cam Newton, who you have to worry about any kind of bootlegs and stuff. So I think if you're Carolina, the thing you really have to do is use your speed on the outside and your strength inside and try to make the Denver defense be the ones that are off balance instead of allowing them to make your offensive line off balance.
And Gary, on that front, if you're looking at it, you have one of the best offensive lines in the entire NFL in Carolina's, and something that the Patriots did not have. They obviously have their own banged up offensive line and those sort of issues. So Carolina's coming in at full strength in that area, which is what has helped Cam be able to have the time to go out there and try to find a Ted Ginn or a Greg Olsen. But you also, on the other side, you have some of the best, probably the best tandem as far as corners. And then you add in those safeties in TJ Ward and Darian Stewart. And you add in 2 linebackers in Brandon Marshall and Trevathan that not only can come at you blitz-wise, they can come and they can cover. Now, Greg Olsen, obviously one of the better tight ends in all the league. It's going to be hard to cover with a linebacker, but you can have that linebacker, and they have other slot defenders that can even cover Olsen if you need to. What do you think about those matchups, the receivers with that secondary with the Broncos?
I'll be honest, the one thing that I look here and that really makes me nervous is kind of what Randy was talking about, the running game of Carolina. I think that when it comes to man-to-man, and if they can keep basically Cam Newton in his little bubble, which is going to be very difficult to do, and keep him in the pocket and, make him sit there and look around, they need to blanket those receivers. Those receivers are a decent, group there. But, Ted Ginn's one of your best guys there. He's got a lot of, great potential. Cotchery, he's a great guy over the middle. He finds a way to get, away from some defenders. Their best bet to stop the passing game is to blanket these guys, to make sure that they keep them in front of them. Do not let these guys get loose or get behind you. The other thing is you got to keep those linebackers in the middle to contain, because not only do they have to contain Jonathan Stewart, Tolbert, guys like that, they're going to have to make sure that they do not let Cam Newton run. Make sure he does not have the ability to get away, to get to the outside. The best way that they're going to be able to do this is to contain Cam Newton. This is something we talked about with the Arizona team.
Well, see, the thing with the Cam Newton is he likes to be in the pocket.
Yeah, he does, but that's where they were unsuccessful, and that was what I was getting to. We talked about this. I think even Randy brought up the point, when they were facing Arizona, the best way to make sure that you keep the Arizona Cardinals safe against this offense is to make sure their defense takes those receivers away, but keeps Cam Newton in front of that way. He has to feel like he has to make all the moves and doesn't leave up to him getting the ball out. See, what Arizona messed up is they could not contain the receivers. They did not do a good enough job. As amazing as I felt that they were going to do, they definitely let them down.
Yeah.
And so that was the problem there. Cam Newton had time, but he didn't feel like he was too rushed, but the receivers were available. If they can make sure that they can stop these receivers, which I think the Broncos can to an extent. I don't know. I still have my worries about them. I think they can cover Ted Ginn. I really feel like any of these receivers that the Panthers have can be covered by this Broncos defensive backfield. My fear is I don't know if those linebackers are going to be able to stay available and be clean, because Greg Olson's going to add another component that they're going to have to lose a linebacker and probably one of your safeties to him. It's a big problem. This is going to be a big task, and I think this is my biggest problem with this game. I think this is really where I really feel like the Panthers have an advantage.
I think the one area where the Cardinals defense is a little bit weak is in the linebacker area. Remember that they had to have Buchanan, who is not a traditional linebacker. Look, he's more of a safety linebacker. He's very, very small. And then you had the wild card in Tyron Matthew, who was not there either, who's a huge part of that defense because he can kind of roam around and almost be like that guy. He'll play in the slot, but then he can kind of be a guy that covers your lead receiver. He can kind of come in and he can kind of be there and you don't see him, and he'll make the play and whatever. So, but then for Denver, you have two guys that are going to be, whether they drop back or whether they because we saw this at Von Miller. Von Miller did this to Tom Brady where he dropped back and that's where he got the interception. And a lot of times, what did Von Miller do? He comes and rushes you. And Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware are not guys that you really want to face all the time. I mean, to come at them like that, that's one area where Arizona, I don't think, has those guys that are going to rush at you and you're really worried about them. And those are guys that you're worried about as far as offensive line, where you have linebackers that can cover the other two or the other one, and then you have two that are going to come at you. So, and that's the thing too with Denver is they can switch it around. They can put in another linebacker, they can bring in another safety or another corner, and they're just as good, So that's something that those receivers are going to have to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, bring up your point about Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, they have to be on top of their game because this Carolina offensive line has been playing awesome. They just done everything they're supposed to be doing this year, and it's going to be up to those guys to really cause havoc, because if they don't, Cam Newton's going to make it happen. I just don't believe – I love Brandon Marshall. I think he's a great linebacker. I love these other linebackers that the Broncos have, but if it's all put on them to make sure that they can be the guys that control Cam Newton, I don't know. I just not sold those guys can be able to stop him.
If there's one coordinator that I have faith in, that I think he studies and does his homework, and if you're counting on him to call a game, Wade Phillips is masterful at that. So I think this is going to be the ultimate test for Ron Rivera, in that we're not getting to that offensive side of the ball yet, but Gary Kubiak is a very experienced coach. Wade Phillips, tons of experience. Ron Rivera, he's got to be put in a different kind of situation there. Bruce Arians, much more offensive-minded guy. Kubiak, a little bit. He's kind of balanced on both, so, and then Wade Phillips is so good that you don't even have to worry about that side. Like, he's the coach for the defense. You have trust in the plays that he's calling and all that kind of stuff. So, that's going to be such a terrific matchup to watch as far as, what that Denver defense is going to be able to do and how they're going to be able to stop Cam Newton if they can, because we look at Cam, and that's one of the great things that he's done this year is he can take that read option and they'll either bring guys across the middle or they'll have Ted Ginn and Corey Brown go just run those 9 routes, and let's see if you beat us. Let's see if we can get the ball down the field. And Randy, the biggest thing, and I think Gary already brought it up, is it's a much different game if you tackle Corey Brown on that, whatever it was, 87-yard touchdown. You tackle Ted Ginn on that reverse that goes in. Obviously tackling is going to be huge here for that Denver defense. You're going to have to make sure you get those guys down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think they can. Obviously the best defense in the league. And the reason why those are so important, other than the fact that they both led to touchdowns, is just Carolina is such a downhill style football team. Like, if they get any sense of momentum, they strive on it. Once you allow them to start dancing and having a good time and feeling good about how things are going, just start packing things up and leave. Because you've seen it in both of their playoff games against Seattle and Arizona, where they went out and just punched them in the mouth, got things rolling, and completely dominated. Now, they kind of rested on their laurels at halftime against Seattle and let Seattle kind of come back a little bit. But against Arizona, they kept their foot down and made sure the game was over before they started celebrating, and they're learning that. But absolutely, you have to go out there and hit these receivers, hit these running backs, and when you hit them, they have to go down. If you allow them to break a couple tackles and make a huge play on you, you're going to then be looking at a whole different kind of Carolina team that you do not want to see.
Especially Cam. You're going after him. You can't do the whole, I'm going to arm tackle him with one arm. You have to get him down because he's so big. He can just bust through your tackle if he wants to. So, anything else you guys feel like needs to be brought up here? How do you feel like the special teams is going to play in this? Obviously, you've got 2 pretty accurate kickers in Gano and McManus. The whole kick return stuff is what it is because that stuff really doesn't. But on punt returns, I think I kind of give Denver the edge because Emmanuel Sanders, what you get from him. Carolina haven't really, you got Ted Ginn too. So do you think one of those guys factors in at all for this?
Yeah, the way the Super Bowl is going to pan out to me, it's going to come down to one of those plays, whether it's like an interception return for a touchdown or a huge punt return or something or a missed field goal at a key situation. I think this game is going to be a lot closer than people are really thinking. I keep seeing that Vegas line going further and further in Carolina's favor, and the special teams I think is going to play a huge role in it. And I also think something that we haven't really brought up is just the fact that Denver's been here before, and the last time they were here, they completely got laughed off the field because Seattle went out there and just destroyed them. So they have that going for them that, they don't want that to happen again. This is also possibly Peyton Manning's last game, so you have that going in Denver's favor. And then the one thing going against Carolina, for most of them, this was their first time. For most of them, they just did their first media day tonight. It's like, this is something completely new. You have to worry about a team that loves momentum as much as Carolina does, going out and being tight because the situation is over their heads. So that's something I really want to see in that first couple drives is how wide are their eyes as they get ready, as they're listening to the national anthem. How are they still bouncing around and having a good time as the first kickoff is going off, or are they just standing there stunned by where they're at? That's something that it's tough to predict because, that's the human psyche, and we'll find out on Sunday. But I think that plays a huge role in this game as well.
Anything on your end, Gary?
Yeah, I agree with Randy on that. And, the one thing you got to look at is, like you said, Sean, both these kickers are very good. They've definitely proven this year that they are, some of the best in this league. And I think that, it would not surprise me at all if it came down to a 45-yard field goal to win the game. It just would not. And, both these guys are right there. They're pretty darn accurate. So I feel like it's going to be interesting. I mean, even if this did come to to a defensive battle, which hey, it could and really could. I know we kept talking about the fact that Cam Newton can really blow up the scoreboard, but I mean, if he's not able to, if Denver's defense plays better, then there could be a battle of field goals, and I think these guys could definitely put that scoreboard up there and really make it. I don't know. They could probably get to the 20 points just with field goals because they're that good.
Yeah, very true. So I think that kind of just does it here for our look at the Carolina offense against the Denver defense. On Thursday, we'll be looking at the Denver offense against the Carolina defense. Should be an interesting matchup there, obviously. We'll get to, if anything interesting happened from the media days or whatever, we'll get to talk about that. I forgot to, let's talk about this because this kind of became a thing. Before we even got to media day, with this whole thing about Cam Newton and the whole, because it always has to be about this. And I saw a lot of posts in places that are not even sports related or whatever talking about this and whatever. They brought up a racial thing about Cam Newton. People are scared about him being a black quarterback, that you've never seen this kind of stuff from him before. And whatever. And we have had several black quarterbacks in the league. Doug Williams won Super Bowl. Obviously, different kind of black quarterback. You have Randall Cunningham. You have others. Do you think Cam is right about that, or is this a little bit of him playing with the media? What do you think this is?
I think this is a situation where a young man is using something as far as motivation goes, and he allowed it to be open. I don't agree with where Cam Newton's coming from here. But I can't be in his shoes. I'm not a black man. I understand that, things over history have not gone well that direction. It's really difficult for me to even talk about that kind of stuff because, listen, I didn't live through any of this stuff. I don't know how it is to be looked down upon by some other races or parts of races and how things like that go. So I really think, from my side of things, that maybe Cam Newton throughout his life has been told that. People are going to be afraid of you because you're a black man. They're going to look at you different. And he maybe used that as motivation. Now, should he have said it in a national platform like he did and let it explode the way it has? Probably not. And this is going to be stuff that he learns. I mean, I really don't think that Cam Newton thinks he's the only black quarterback that was ever good. I mean, he's not the only black quarterback that's good right now. And, I mean, it just brings in more facts of, do we really even need to consider him as a black quarterback anymore? Or is he just a really good quarterback? And it's just one of those things I wish we could get to, but then something like this comes up and we have to discuss it. And it's just one of those really awkward things that we have to discuss. And I never know how to put it right without really sounding terrible. But it's just one of those things. I think, he spoke his mind about how he feels about something, whether right or wrong, or we agree with him or not. And, if that's the way he looks at it, I can't disagree with him. But I just wish he wouldn't have said it.
Gary, I'm going to throw this at you too.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to have become this thing of, if you are going for the Broncos because of Peyton Manning and you're not going for the Panthers, that you're racist. And it's really weird, isn't it? Why can't you just want Peyton Manning because it's his last hurrah and Cam is young and he will have many years to try to do this, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he is black and all that. I'm not saying, because there are wackos out there that obviously this is a thing for them, and more power to you if you're still living in the dark ages and you're raising that flag, then whatever. But I just see it as, personally, I've always been on this side. This is the side that Gary and I kind of went on. We also felt that the Broncos were they're obviously in the Super Bowl for a reason. That, pretty much he said it. This is my last rodeo, and you want to see him go out on top, right? Just like Elway did. It has nothing to do with that. But what do you say to the people that are saying it in that format?
First of all, I hate that race even became a problem or an issue in this game. This is disappointing. It really, really is. It's like some of the things you're hearing in other sports, and the fact that the NBA is dominated by primarily African American people, and things like that. I mean, that should be a discussion.
Why is that a big deal? Like, that's been that way for how long? I mean, that's like saying hockey doesn't have enough black people in it. Well, look at the people that it's coming from. I mean, it's stupid,
Yeah, I totally agree. And we're talking about this game, and so I'm going to say this. Just to nullify that argument of if you don't go for Cam Newton, you're racist. No, I disagree with that. I believe, if I'm not wrong, now you guys correct me, but I believe DeMarcus Ware is African American. Right. And this may be his last hurrah. I think Brandon Marshall, I think he's African. So wait a minute.
Yeah, and for me, because Ware was a Cowboy, I want him to win. Yeah.
So I mean, I agree, and I just think that we should. This is not even a topic. I think that Cam Newton's statement was because of his history, the way he feels, the way he was raised, and that's fine. I think God, that Dr. King afforded him and many other African Americans that opportunity. That is a blessing. It has put us in a different spot than where we would have if that would have never happened. And man, we are so great now, especially as a nation, to have this happen where we can all speak out and speak freely. And so I think that, he made his decision on his words based on what he believes, and that's great. I may disagree to an extent because he may feel like he's a different type of African American. I think that may be where he's coming from. I still disagree. We're all, people, even if you're the same race, white people are very different, as much as African Americans are very different. Chinese people are. I'll say this. I was in community college, very good friends with this Chinese young man. We were really good. I always hung out, talked all the time. And one day I said something to the fact of, you're Chinese. How does this work in your culture? And he got upset with me, very upset. And he goes, "I'm not Chinese. I'm Cantonese." And my mind was like, well, I didn't mean to be offensive, but you're from the Asian culture. You're from the so that's where it comes from. People have different spots. Like white people call people white trash, and I think that's where Cam's coming from. He's like, I'm a different sect of African American. I'm this way. Doug Williams, that was a different kind of guy. I am this type. So when you see me on the field, I'm this type of African American. Blah blah blah. I just wish this was never a story. This is overblown. Let Cam say what he wants to say. That's his free speech. I agree that he deserves it. I may not agree, but that doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. It is about what Cam feels, and that's his prerogative, the way he wants to, feel about it, the way he wants to say it. And, I think we shouldn't have to avoid the issue either, because then that also brings up other factors of like, well, if you can't talk about it, what does that say about you? But I think we handle it as well as you can. To me, I look at it and I don't care about all that. I look at players on the field. Personally, I don't have a stake in this. My team is not playing in the Super Bowl. Neither is Randy's. Neither is Gary's. If the Panthers win, I'm going to be happy for the Panthers because they had the best year out of any NFL team in this entire league, and Cam Newton is the MVP of this league, and he deserves to win for the year that he has had and whatever. And you can bring in the sentimental stuff with Peyton Manning, and you can bring in we have a tie to Wade Phillips too, having be a former coach of our team, and DeMarcus Ware and all that stuff. And if the Broncos win, and they win without controversy, and the Panthers didn't get to the mountaintop very much like the Patriots didn't, then that's what happens. But it's not going to be because that person was this color or that color, or who cares about that? It's about the game that is being played out on the field. And it doesn't matter about all of that,
Yeah. It just bothers me that this is where we come to in our society where we're so worried about, movie awards. We're so worried about the Super Bowl. We're so worried about everything being, different races. Whoever deserves it, deserves it. That's the way it is to me.
Yeah,
and
the fact that, what is it, at the Oscars?
Yeah.
Whichever one that is that Chris Rock's supposed to be hosting, part of the reason, they're getting people to watch is because he's going to give some speech about, something that has to do with something about African Americans and something. I'm just like, why does that have to be a reason to get people to watch? I don't understand that. Do you guys understand that? Why can't it just be to watch what you're supposed to be watching it for?
Yeah, I agree. And it should be about the films. It should be about the actors. And if no people were nominated for a reason, that's just, and maybe they need to look at it, because personally, I'm not a movie nut. I used to be back in the day, not so much anymore.
But what does that say? We're supposed to have an affirmative action, a quota of, we have to make sure we fill this many spots of movies before they get nominated? I mean, what is this? Aren't you supposed to just take the best 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever movies and put them all up there? I mean,
it's the way. It's my argument last week when you guys were talking about the Pro Bowl. Why I talked about the Pro Bowl is because the Pro Bowl is not the elite. Now, it looks the elite. It is not elite because of this reason. You did not have all of the best players playing in that Pro Bowl game this year. You had some guys chosen to come and play in the game that didn't get a nomination, didn't get selected as a Pro Bowler because someone else opted out. So that means that some inferior was able to become an elite, where it's the same with the movies.
Yeah, where they have 140 guys run the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
So that's
absolutely ridiculous to me.
Yeah, so do you pick movies that are not as good as other films and say, well, I'm sorry, this movie was a 5-star movie. We have 3 5-star movies. One's got to go so we could fit this 4-star movie in because of affirmative action. I don't know if I agree, but that's a whole different story. It's not, I wonder about you guys in video games. I mean, you guys both do video game podcasts. You both love them. You spend a lot of time playing video games. I would hate to have one day to hear that you guys are going to be considered racist or anything because you chose another game to play 44 hours on compared to another game you only play 10.
I think that's the one good thing about video games. So, I mean, such things are fantasy-wise and aliens and this and that. Race sometimes is
and we also, the thing is, it's companies that make those games. We don't. There might be a star or somebody that has a name that's involved, but you hardly ever, for one, just to be honest, we don't really, there aren't that many, black people out there that are known that are just making video games. It's still a very much Asian and white, not playing, making, different deal, okay? And so that's all we know, but we don't think about it like that. We just think about it, Randy, you can back him up. We just think about it as this company made this game. What do we think about this game? We don't think about, other than it being like The Legend of Zelda, we know Shigeru Miyamoto is behind that. Okay, so we look at it from, he has this history of the guy that made Mario, the guy that made Zelda, the guy that made this. We don't think about it. But when you take out those huge names that have been there forever, we don't think about it as, oh, that guy's white. It has anything to do with the fact that the guy's white, so that game sucks. I mean, it's nothing to do with that. It's just,
exactly.
I mean, it's a lot like with movies, too, where a few directors, but you don't know their whole team that's based around it. You don't know the sound guys. You don't know all of that. It's kind of with me in video games where, like Sean said, for the most part, your major hitters. But as Wes and I do our podcast and we do our spot at the beginning called Player Nay, where we go through some of the games that are getting released and whether we want to play them or not, there's a lot of times where we'll bring up a game and go, oh yeah, the people that made this game also made this. And you go, oh, I had no clue. Well, that's cool. I have no idea who's part of this group, but this group made this game I liked, so I might like this one. The race card and all that just doesn't see the forefront in video games because we don't see any of the people that create most of the games. I mean, again, like Sean said, you're going to have the Miyamotos and you're going to have, I'm blanking on the God of War guy right now, but I mean, they're going to be out the forefront. Yeah, Jaffe and a few others, a few voice actors that get a lot of recognition and stuff. But for the most part, they are faceless names that scroll across your screen at the end
and
of it.
even when you have things like the Western RPG and the Japanese RPG, it's not done in a well, our culture is better, so the Western number one. No, it's never done that way. It's about what you like in your video game. It's about the character type. It's about the way that whether it has an exploration element or it's more about the story. It's obviously Japanese is going to have Japanese voice actors that they then have to change that into English when they bring it over here or whatever. And Western RPGs have different dynamics about them that are different than the Japanese RPG, but it's never done in a way that it's about culture. It's about just what you like, so...
Yeah, and I agree, and you guys make good points. I think my overlook at it is, what if a company like Rock Nation decided to start producing video games, and they put a bunch of video games out, and then they said, well, we're going to face off against Rockstar, and if you have a stack of video games and someone comes in your house and they say, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Rockstar games, you only have one Rock Nation game here, you're racist. That's silly. It's just that's on my point. It should never be that way.
It's like. I guess Grand Theft Auto would be a good example. San Andreas, the main character is black, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you have Vice City and you have 3, but you don't have San Andreas, you're racist. Like, it's just, really? Like, it might just be that I didn't like San Andreas. Like, I didn't like the setting. I mean, I love Vice City because it has the 80s soundtrack in it. Like, I could care less about the San Andreas game. So, just...
As a counterpoint, as we turn into a video game podcast, I like San Andreas because I could go out and make my dude super fat just by eating a bunch of food.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I love that you could just change the shape of your guy by either working out or...
the point of what we're doing here is, you see how ludicrous this is?
Yeah.
Only in sports do we get this crap where...
I wouldn't say just this word. I would say in mass media. Once a CNN gets a hold of a Grand Theft Auto story, then it becomes racist. And for the most part, and I think all three of us are going to agree here, and hopefully a lot of people that are listening to us still, thank you for sticking with us, agree as well. It's for the most part, we don't see race. We never see it as a problem. The moment it becomes a problem is when it is beaten over your head with a stick by CNN or Yahoo or ESPN that, oh my God, this people are thinking this is racist, and then it becomes a thing. It's like if we're all hanging out, it's like we're not. There's going to be idiots, like Sean said, that still live in the 30s, but for the most part, it's whatever. We have different cultures, but we can still get along. I work at a casino. I get all sorts of races that come and hang out, and it's all totally cool, and nobody has a problem with anybody. It's I think when you look at it in a small picture, it's totally fine, and that's all we do. It's just the mass media going, we need a story. Where do we go now? Well, nobody's shown their boob lately, so...
and I'm the same way. I work in a very urban... my Kmart is in a very, not great part of town, and it's very Latin and African American people that go there, and you have people that act differently. The way that they act with their kids, the way that they and then you have a lot of white people that go in there too. I deal with all sorts of different people, and it's so to me it's cool actually to see how the different people interact with each other and whatever, and I don't even see it that way. It's just to me, it's just a cool way to it's in a outsider point of view, just be able to see people the way they interact with who they're around and how they act differently, whatever. It's just, it's whatever,
Yeah, it is.
This should have never became way. This made this podcast way a bigger deal than it really should have been, but I just wanted to have that talk because. It was in a wrestling group where this was brought up in, and there's a lot of people that were complaining that this should not be in a wrestling group because there's nothing to do with wrestling and whatever. And I just brought up the fact that, look, this is ludicrous to me that this had to be brought up in conversation during the Super Bowl because we don't have Now, obviously, the NFL is still investigating the HGH thing with Peyton Manning. But because of the fact that it's already been said that they're not doing anything about it until after the Super Bowl, well, we got to have some kind of weird story to be perpetuating before the game begins. Because there's got to be some kind of subreddit, some kind of sub-story going on that somebody can, perpetuate, that somebody can hail as some great thing when it's over. Because I hate that. I do not, and there's going to be stories in papers in online forums that it's going to be about. And listen, it is great. It is great for that community, for that ethnicity, whatever. That, oh my God, look at the great things that Cam Newton has done for black people because he won the Super Bowl. And it's just like, can it just be that Cam Newton won the Super Bowl and that the Carolina Panthers won the Super Bowl? Why does it have to be about this and some other subculture thing?
Yeah, I agree. And, you said about the storylines, Sean, it's very true. There's no Deflategate this year. Now with the HGH thing, it's Inflategate. Trying to make, Peyton Manning's made his body, healthy enough to go out and play these games. But you know what? Let's just enjoy the game. Come on. What happened to the football game? Why are we having these other storylines? Let's just enjoy the game.
Yeah. Well, speaking of enjoying the game, that's what we're going to try to do when we talk about the other side of the field on Thursday. We'll, of course, talk about whatever news has been going on, and we'll talk about some of the media day stuff. Hopefully, it has nothing to do with this conversation that we just had. Hopefully, that's not something that comes up a lot. And, yeah, if you stuck with us the whole time, that's not something that we do. This is not turned into a political podcast when we're just done talking football. That's something that just kind of happened because it was in the news. But, yeah, so if you enjoyed the podcast and you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, wherever there are podcasts. You can find us Last Word Radio, which, dadgummit, I forgot again. And, if the people that are listening that, are making sure that we do our part as partner podcasts to say what we're supposed to say, I forgot to say at the beginning. Go ahead and say it now. We are in partnership with the Last Word on Sports.com. Thank them for all of the help that they've given us from the entire time that we've been involved with them, which has been for a long time now. And they've given us a great platform. They have a wonderful website. I write wrestling articles over there. This podcast and the wrestling podcasts are over there. The Wrestling and Rap podcast is also posted over there. So, so if, and I already mentioned them, of course, we have an entire W2M network that you can go subscribe to as well. That's in all the same places that you can just find this podcast. Of course, that includes our wrestling podcast. That includes that Wrestling and Rap podcast that Harry and Patrick do. It includes the podcast that Randy does with Wes that he talked about, Bad Luck Busting. It includes the video game podcast that I do with Mark Morrison. That's part of Full Mania. So lots of options and lots of things for you to listen to there. Randy's thinking about doing a fantasy football focused podcast, maybe for next season. So you'll get lots of options. You just subscribe to that. They all come in one thing, and you can decide what you want to listen to, what you don't want to. And of course, you can find us on YouTube as well, WTM Network. So Randy, I know you got an episode that came out today that you're very proud of. You were telling me about, so tell the people about it.
Yeah, and luckily it will come out today. Wes was definitely having some computer issues that we were worried that might delay it, but he's got that figured out. But yeah, our episode that came out today is a lot of fun. I was in a goofy mood when we recorded it, so it was a lot of pushing buttons, and we had, I think, a really interesting discussion about the game Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, and how I'm still conflicted on whether I think it's a classic or not. I can see the argument for and against. I also talked about a wonderful indie game that if you have not heard of, please go check it out. It's called Freedom Planet. It is a love story to all Sega Genesis platformer games. It's wonderfully done, made by a group called Galaxy Trail. I mean, they did an awesome job. And Wes talks about a very interesting, weird Japanese game called Catherine that delves
Catherine
into
is so good.
adult relationships in the weirdest way. I've only played an hour of it, but what Wes told me on Sunday made me need an adult.
Yeah, it will certainly mess with you.
Yes. But all in all, we had a really good time, and I'm really proud of what we did, especially for the fact that, we've had technical difficulties in this podcast. It happens everywhere. We were about an hour and 15 minutes in, and we were just wrapping up our news segment, and my computer froze. And that's what we're recording on. So we all freaked out for about 10 minutes, and once we rebooted, luckily Audacity had saved it. So I'm happy that it's been able to come out, and hopefully people enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm excited to listen to it tomorrow while I'm at work. That's somebody posted because apparently on Raw, Lillian Garcia announced the Usos as Grammy Award winning instead of Slammy Award winning, so now it's become a meme everywhere. And on Raw, they would not stop making fun of Lillian Garcia for saying it, because Vince trolls his own employees on live television. So somebody posted a picture of Milli Vanilli asking, they won Grammy Awards, and putting them as the Usos is hilarious. All right, so anyway, rate, review, subscribe, everybody. Thank you for enjoying the podcast. We'll be back on Thursday night, Friday morning. And see you later, everybody.